Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, we are going to be previewing the upcoming season for the Brooklyn Nets. However, before I get too far into it, I want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all the support that I've been receiving lately, and I hope to see that continue. Now, without further ado, let's talk about the Nets. However, before I feel that we can adequately preview the upcoming season for the Nets, I think that it's important that we reflect upon and discuss the transactions made by this team in the recently concluded NBA offseason. They kicked off their offseason by trading Zanin Musa and a second-round pick for Bruce Brown. This is a move that made a lot of sense to me because Brown is someone that can likely help this team and give them some rotation minutes from the guard positions right off the rip, whereas Musa was a player that was probably going to need 2 or 3 seasons to develop into being a rotational guy, and at this point might not ever do that at all. So I thought that this move made a lot of sense for the Nets, and I think that Brown is certainly going to help them out. On draft night, they traded the 57th pick and the 19th pick for Landrieu Shamit and the 55th pick. Shamit was a good get for them because he's going to be someone who can space the floor at a high level for KD and Kyrie. I just question this move because I think that they should have used that 19th pick to acquire Luke Kennard, who was another part of that trade, which is actually a 3-teamer involving the Pistons, Nets, and the Clippers. But Shamit is going to help them out, and he also has another year of being on his rookie scale contract, whereas Kennard would have been up for an extension following this year. In the draft, they selected Reggie Perry with the 55th pick. Perry, out of Mississippi State, was a highly productive big man who showed an ability to knock down shots and also has a knack for being a solid ball handler out of the forward position, maybe even the center position, depending on where you view him positionally. However, I think that he's going to struggle defensively. He's not much of a rim protector, and I don't think he's going to be able to guard on the perimeter very well either. So I don't really see the fit for him outside of just being a guy who can come off the bench and score a couple buckets per night, which, not too much to say here. We'll move on. In free agency, they were able to check off their first priority, which was re-signing Joe Harris. They inked him to a 4-year, $72 million deal, and similar to the Marcus Morris deal with the Los Angeles Clippers that I talked about yesterday, this was an overpay, and Harris is not worth what his contract is, and that might hinder this team moving forward and limit their spending. However, Harris was a player that they could not have afforded to let walk. They had no way of replacing his production since they were over the cap, and he genuinely is a huge part of what they do offensively because of his floor spacing capabilities, both off catch and shoots and coming off the screens. So this makes sense to me, and although I don't love the contract, it was something they had to do, so kudos to them for getting it done. They then filled out their bench by inking Jeff Green and Tyler Johnson to 1-year minimum contracts. Johnson is not a player that I'm overly impressed with, and I don't think that he's going to get too many minutes for this team, but Green was a guy I liked quite a bit in his minutes with Houston last year as a small ball big man, and I think that he can help this Nets team out coming off the bench. Now that we have gone over the offseason, I think that we're ready to preview the upcoming season. And when I do this exercise, I talk about each player, lay out my expectations for them as an individual, and then combine those expectations to make some predictions for what I think the team could do on the season as a whole. When we do this, we start at the point guard position. So the first guy I'll talk about will be Kyrie Irving. Irving, when healthy, is a legit top 5 point guard in the entire NBA, and I guess you could probably make a debate that he's the 3rd best point guard behind Steph Curry and Damian Lillard. Of course, you could make the debate that Chris Paul or Luka, if you consider him a point guard, are better than Kyrie, but he's certainly a top-tier point guard. He's an elite-level shot creator. He's a terrific ball handler, a great playmaker, both for himself and for teammates, does a great job in the pick and roll, and he's a really valuable offensive guard for all of those reasons. On defense, he struggles a little bit because of his smaller frame, If he gets switched on to bigger wings, it's pretty much lights out. But he is at least serviceable when matched up against players of his same position. And with his terrific offensive game, that is a really valuable player and someone that I think will probably be an all-star this year if he's able to stay healthy. That's probably the biggest question with Kyrie because he's struggled to stay on the court in recent years. So it remains to be seen what his health stuff is, and I think he will likely have some load management stuff going on where he's not in the lineup every night, even if he is healthy. Next guy here is Spencer Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie is another very good shot creator, a terrific passer, had an assist rate of 35% last year, which is absolutely outstanding. He also averaged 20 points on solid efficiency from the line and from the field as a whole. On defense, he's not great, but he's also not atrocious. He's a serviceable point of attack defender, and his positional size that allows him to guard multiple positions. But I don't love his fit with this team since he's not a plus 3-point shooter and he appears to be someone that they want to be in the starting lineup alongside KD and Kyrie. I just don't really see how he's going to help them out. Yes, he is someone that can attack closeouts at a high level, but I don't necessarily think that people are going to be closing out too hard on him because he hasn't shot the ball at a higher than like 31 or 32% rate for his career. But he is a pretty solid trade chip for this team, probably the most likely player to get moved. If I were the Nets, I would be searching the market to try to find a 3-and-D wing player that could take on the role that Taurean Prince was supposed to fulfill in exchange for Dinwiddie, as he is an expiring contract. He has a lot of skills that overlap with the two best players on this team, and he's pretty likely to walk when he expires due to just the cap situation that the Nets are in. Next guy here is Tyler Johnson. Johnson is not much in my eyes. He's okay defensively because he has pretty solid size for a guard. But on the offensive end, he's not a very good passer. He's not a very good shooter. And his rim finishing production has gone down. He's not been as efficient at the rim as he has been at other points in his career. I don't really view him as an NBA caliber player at this point, and I don't think he'll get too many minutes for this team. Giaza is the last guy here. I think that he's likely to be on a two-way contract, if I'm not mistaken. And I like Giaza quite a bit. He is very much undersized. I believe he's just a touch under 6 foot at 5'11", and that hurts him quite a bit defensively. But he is a good passer and a really knockdown 3-point shooter. So I at least think that he's someone that could exist in the NBA as a backup point guard at some point. Now that we've covered the point guards, we can move on to the wings, where we'll start with Kevin Durant. Durant is one of the best players in the NBA when he's good to go, and I, based off what I've seen in the preseason action, believe that he is going to be pretty close to the best Kevin Durant possible. He's an elite level shooter, always has been and probably always will be. He's able to use his elite size as a 7-foot wing to shoot it over players. He can take advantage of mismatches and really is just a super high level offensive player. He's also a really good rebounder for a wing because of his size. He's good defensively because of his length, especially when he's locked in, which is not necessarily going to always be the case this season. I'm guessing because of him coming off an injury and just being up there in age a little bit. We've seen players like that take a step back on defense, but when they need him to, he's going to be a guy who can step up and take on challenging matchups against opposing big wing players. KD is outstanding. Not too much more to say here. Kerris Levert is the next guy here, and I am a huge Kerris Levert fan. He's someone that I buy as a future all-star because of the shot-creating ability. He's a really good finisher at the rim. He's a good passer for a wing. And on defense, I also think that he is outstanding. He doesn't get enough credit on the defensive end of the floor, in my opinion. I think that at some point in his career, he's going to grade out as a really plus defender. He has terrific length. He's very quick, and that allows him to stick in front of guards, and because of that length, he has enough positional size to switch down and guard threes and fours even on the defensive end of the floor. With that in combination with his shot creation skills, you have a great player already, and he took a step forward in his three-point shooting, went from being like a 32% shooter to a 36% shooter last year. If we can see continued growth in his catch and shoot shooting, which I believe we will, because he was a 40+% three-point shooter during his time at Michigan, I think Kerris Levert still has a shot to blossom and really be a great third option for this Brooklyn Nets team. If he is coming off the bench, which it appears is going to be the case, he's my pick for sixth man of the year, as you'll see in my overall season predictions video that I think is going to come out on Monday. Next guy here is Joe Harris. Harris is super important to this Brooklyn Nets team because he is a knockdown three-point shooter. Terrific off of movement, is someone that you can run pin downs and other off-the-ball screens for, and is just a really elite floor spacer for his team. One of the best 5 shooters on planet Earth. On defense, he also gives really good effort and has solid size that allows him to really compete on the defensive end. That at least makes him an okay defender, although his lack of athleticism limits him from being the plus defender that a lot of players with his basketball IQ are. But with the shooting ability, that makes him a really high quality role player and someone that the Nets prioritize keeping around for this season. He's really going to help them out in a lot of minutes as a 5th starter for this team. Next guy here is Taurean Prince. Prince is someone that I really liked coming out of Baylor. I thought that he had a few great offensive seasons with the Hawks because he was such a good three-point shooter. Knocked it down at around a 39% mark for his career prior to this year, when he took a huge step back and went all the way down to 33%. In Atlanta, he also showed a knack for being a really solid guy at attacking closeouts and getting to the rim where he was a good finisher. He's never been a good playmaker, and he does turn the ball over at a bit higher of a rate than you would like. But because of the shooting and his size on defense, that allowed him to be okay despite not being a great effort guy on that end, made him an intriguing wing player. But with the shooting taking a huge step back this past season, I just don't really see it with Taurean Prince anymore, and he's someone that I think is a really negative value contract, and the Brooklyn Nets should probably look to get rid of him because that luxury tax check that Josiah is going to be receiving at the end of this year is going to be pretty steep, and Taurean Prince just isn't doing enough to make this team better, in my opinion, to warrant the $13 or $14 million that he's making, I believe. Landrieu Shamit is the next guy here. Shamit is a knockdown shooter, is kind of a guy who can play the 1 or the 2. At the 1, he's not much of a shot creator, but if he's playing alongside someone like Kerris Levert or Kevin Durant that is really strong as an on-ball shot creator, he's able to space the floor for them and knock down open looks. On defense, he's a pretty negative defender. People point out that he locked down Steph Curry in that series where the Clippers were able to push the Warriors to 6, but I think a lot of that was just Steph missing some open shots. I'm not a huge Landrieu Shamit fan, and overall I think that Luke Kennard would have helped this team out much more than the acquisition of Sham, but he is going to shoot the ball at a high level, and when you have players like Katie and Kyrie, that is a valuable guy to have. Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot, the Frenchman whose name I love to say. Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot. I could just say it over and over. Plus defender, on the ball at the very least because of his athleticism and size. Off the ball, he gets lost a little bit and just isn't a great team defender overall. And on offense, I don't think that he's a terrific shooter by any stretch of the imagination, and that limits how good of a complementary player he can be because his handle isn't quite good enough for him to really be an on-the-ball player. I know that he has some fans around the league that love the athleticism and really think that he has a chance to be a rotation guy, but I just don't buy it with him at the same level that some do. Rodion's Kurucs is the last guy here, and Kurucs is a guy that I actually really like as a basketball player. Last year, we saw him shoot the ball much better than he had before, as he was around a 36% shooter, which in combination with his ability to attack closeouts and finish at the rim is a valuable offensive player, and he was already a very good defensive player with really good height and really good length. I think he has like a 7'2" wingspan, which is absolutely terrific for a wing player. Allows him to guard a lot of big men, as well as he can also guard some like smaller wings and point guard type players because of his athleticism, and he has great motor on the defensive end as well. He plays hard, and you can see why I like this guy, but the big problem with him is that he's very turnover prone and doesn't make very good decisions on team defense. That ends up hurting him at times because he's not always in the right position and can take unnecessary gambles. And on offense, he makes a lot of really questionable passes and has some spotty shot selection as well. But I like this guy because of the athleticism, and I think that he could iron out and become a pretty solid option as a rotation piece in the NBA at some point. Off the floor, I have some questions because I know that he had a court case. I haven't heard too much about the results. I probably should have looked that up before I talked about this topic, but I'm pretty sure he had some domestic abuse stuff going on, which is never good to see. Definitely not something that you want to see from a player, and depending on what the results of that court case was, I might be a very anti-Rodions Kurucs guy, which is a bummer because I like him as a player quite a bit. Now that we've covered the wings, we can move on to the big men, where we'll start with Jarrett Allen. I believe quite firmly that Allen should be the starter for this team. I think he's a significantly better player than Deandre Jordan. He's much better offensively, where he has a lot more burst, a lot more verticality as a rim runner and finisher. He's limited to that. He can't do much else on offense. He hasn't shown much propensity as a jump shooter, and he's not much of a passer, so he's not much of a short roll guy in the pick and roll. But as someone who can just set picks and roll to the basket and finish lobs, he's also really good at catching lobs. I've seen ones where it's like one-handed lob catches that are way out, and he is able to corral it and finish anyways. So that's valuable, but I don't think he can do much more than that. On defense is where he's really impactful, though. I think that he, at some point, is going to be able to guard on the perimeter because he has pretty solid mobility. He has looked like burnt toast on the perimeter thus far in his career, but I think that with the athleticism, he's going to be able to guard multiple positions, and that is very valuable because he's already a really high-level rim protector, as he really contests shots at a high rate, isn't necessarily a great shot blocker, but rim protection is super valuable, and you don't necessarily need to be a great shot blocker to be a great rim protector. There's a difference there, and Jarrett Allen does that role quite well. I'm not sure that I see the upside for him as a top 10 starting center in the league, but I do think that he's going to be a good option there for a long time because of the rim running and rim protecting stuff. Next guy here is Deandre Jordan, who is pretty much a similar player to Jarrett Allen, but just worse. He is not as at this point in his career is not as athletic as Allen, which forces him to end up being a step behind quite a bit. He ends up allowing players to get a little bit too much space, and they're able to take advantage of that by scoring on him. He also isn't as good of a rim protector as he once was, and that limits how effective he can be on the defensive end of the floor. On offense, he's certainly not the athlete, like I said before, that he once was, and that limits his verticality as a rim runner, and that's about all he does at a plus level on offense. So if you're not getting any of that stuff from DJ, what's the point in playing him big minutes over Jarrett Allen? Yeah, he can still do the things that he's always done well, like rim protection and finishing at the basket, but he's not as good at them anymore, and Jarrett Allen can do those same things as well as a few more things, and even the attributes that Deandre Jordan has that he does well, Jarrett Allen can do them all better. So why play Deandre Jordan more than Jarrett Allen? I don't get it. I know that he's best friends with KD and Kyrie, blah, 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 but man, I really hope Steve Nash just can identify Jarrett Allen as the better player and start him moving forward. Next guy here is Jeff Green, I think that I could have classified Green as a wing in this exercise because he's probably going to play more 4 than he is 5. But I think that in certain games where Jordan and Allen aren't really playable, especially in the playoffs, I think that Jeff Green can take on a bit of that small ball 5 role. He is a good 3-point shooter who can space the floor on that end. Can still attack closeouts, isn't quite the high-level athlete that he once was and not the best finisher at the rim, but because of the 3-point shooting, that's very valuable from the big man position, and I think he's really going to help this team out. He's also a good defender who can guard multiple positions, is strong enough to guard 5s inside, and is laterally quick enough to guard multiple positions on the perimeter as well. I like this pickup quite a bit for the Nets, and he's someone that I think is going to be a really nice option for them coming off the bench. I hope he can play that small ball 5 role a little bit, because the Rockets were very fun when they were playing him at the 5 and rocking that small ball lineup. So if the Nets can trot out like a Kyrie Irving, Kerris Levert, Joe Harris, Kevin Durant, and Jeff Green, or throw in Spencer Dinwiddie somewhere in there, that would be a very fun lineup, and I hope that it's utilized at some point in this year. Nicholas Claxton is the next guy here. I like Claxton quite a bit, and I think that he's going to be a starting center at some point in his career. He is a really good athlete, and he can guard on the perimeter already, as well as being a good rim protector, basically just a do-it-all defensive center. And on offense, he can handle the ball, and he showed an ability to shoot it when he was in college. And he's also a decent finisher at the rim, where he can use his athleticism and verticality to be a solid rim runner. That's pretty much your do-it-all prototypical starting center in the NBA. He's still raw, and he needs to improve all those skills and get them to an NBA-ready level. But I think that he's a nice developmental piece for this Nets team, and is someone that I could definitely see being a solid rotation caliber piece by the end of his rookie deal. The last guy here is Reggie Perry, who I talked about before. Interesting offensive big guy, not so much defense. Not sure I see him getting too many minutes for this team this year. Overall, though, I think I'm quite a bit higher on the Nets than many people are. Yeah, I'm not the hugest Spencer Dinwiddie fan, and I think that the Deandre Jordan stuff is very questionable. I also don't think that their wing depth is as good as a lot of people think. But I'm much higher on Kerris Levert than most. I think I'm also higher on Jarrett Allen than most, and I think that Jeff Green is going to be a really nice add for this team, who can give them 20-plus minutes a night off the bench. I actually think that this Nets team is going to be a bit better than a lot of people do, but I don't think that they're the best team in the Eastern Conference like other people do. So I'd say I'm probably right in the middle. I think I might have said that I was high on them before comparatively to others, but I'm probably right in the middle. There's some people that think they're going to be the 1 seed and win the finals. There's some people that think they're going to be the 6th seed and lose in the first round. I think they'll probably be like the 4th or 5th seed and either lose a close first round matchup, lose a close second round matchup, or I think they even could make it to the conference finals and give Milwaukee or Philadelphia or whoever it may be a really solid run for their money. So while I don't see the Nets as a lock to be like a Eastern Conference Finals team, I think that they are a championship contender, and I view them as kind of an inner circle contender to hoist that Larry O'Brien trophy at the conclusion of the season. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. How good do you think this Nets team can be? If I were making a prediction for them for the regular season, it's a 72-game season, and in a regular 82-game season, I think they probably win somewhere between 46 and 50 games. So in this shortened year, I think they'll probably win between 43 and 48 games. So let's see, that's a 43 and 29 floor and a 48 and 24 ceiling. So yeah, that sounds about right to me. And yeah, I think that's about it. Everything I needed to cover, I talked about. So that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you all again very soon.